Thanks, Sam. Welcome to the webinar about the appraisal requirements under Reg Z and Reg B. The requirements took effect on a Saturday, January 18th, 2014. Hope you didn't have to work that day on a Saturday, but they're important new requirements, and the extent to which they actually affect you is going to depend upon the nature of your dwelling secured loans. So they came out with these rules in early 2013. They've changed them since then, but as with a number of the other changes made to the Dodd-Frank rules, when they made their tweaks, they actually improved the rules, either in terms of the clarifications they made, or with respect to other changes, they built in some more exemptions that give you more opportunities to not have a particular type of application covered. So we've got a set of goals under Reg Z and under Reg B, and looking at the goals, you get a big picture of what the requirements are. First, let me note at the outset that the requirements under Reg B and Reg Z are similar in many respects, but they certainly are not the same. There is some overlapping coverage, but there are some types of loan applications that are covered by the Reg B requirements that won't be covered by the Reg Z requirements, and vice versa. There are some requirements that are the same, but there are also some rather significant differences. In the course of this webinar, we're going to cover the rules as they stand right now. So you're going to get the original rules as tweaked up through and including the tweaks that are the most recent, which were the ones that were published on December 12th of 2013, and those were integrated into the new rule and made effective the same day the original final rule was effected, January 18th. But under the Reg Z changes, a creditor can't make certain higher-priced mortgage loans without getting a written appraisal by a certified or licensed appraiser who actually does a physical inspection of the interior of the property. In some instances, under the new Reg Z provisions, the creditor will also have to get an additional appraisal that's from a different appraiser that it will come into play in certain instances where the seller has owned the property for a short period of time before entering into a deal with your applicant to purchase the property. And that additional appraisal is special because it has some content requirements that go beyond the norm in terms of looking at the improvements that were made, in terms of looking at changes in the market conditions since the seller acquired the property. And again, the appraiser has to actually be the Avon lady with the ding-dong, go inside and look inside the property. There is also a disclosure that is required to be given when these Reg Z appraisal requirements come into play that tells the applicant that, look, we're going to get an appraiser to come in and look at this, but you may want to get an appraisal for your own purposes. And then there's a requirement to provide a copy of each appraisal, and you can't charge for it at least 3 business days prior to consummation of the transaction. So that's the Reg Z stuff that we'll go into detail on. Contrast that with the Reg B changes. On the Reg B changes, You're going to be giving a disclosure within 3 business days of receiving the application that tells the applicant, hey, we may get an appraisal or valuation. If we do, we're going to give you a copy, but you may want to get one for yourself. You're going to have to provide a copy of any appraisal or valuation developed in connection with the application, and you have to do it promptly upon completion or at least 3 business days before consummation or account opening, and that's a whichever is earlier test. There's a waiver in there. It's not a waiver of giving the copy. It's a waiver of the timing requirements, and you got to make sure that you are using the waiver correctly if you use it. And then there's a prohibition against charging for a copy of the appraisals. We're going to go through the scope of coverage of each of these requirements so you'll see how they're different, and there are tons of nuances here in each of these rules. The rulemaking information can be found on the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau's website, even though the Reg Z appraisal rules, interestingly, were done on an interagency basis as required by Dodd-Frank. The Reg B changes were made by the CFPB by itself, but both changes are found on the CFPB's website, and more explanatory information is on their mortgage rule implementation page. And of course, where I like to go to research all of this is the alphabet soup section on Bankers Online, because that's the easiest way to see it all in context. So, Jack, shall we start with the Equal Credit Opportunity Act?
Yes, let's do. And, Mary Beth, this is where it all started. ECOA has had a requirement for a number of years to give the borrower a copy of the appraisal. The new rules that, I guess today is really the first business day for most of you where you're going to have to worry about these. The new rules, some respects are less burdensome, some respects are more burdensome. They've just changed what we had to do already. And then we throw in top of the Reg Z stuff you mentioned. Mary Beth, from my perspective, Congress put these requirements in here twice.
I agree.
And it's just a mistake.
Yes.
When you look at the Reg B requirements, they're not that complicated, really. When you look at the Reg Z HPML requirements, they're more complicated than Reg B, but they're not that complicated. But when you have to play them against one another, because you're going to have transactions that are subject to Reg B, but not Reg Z, then all we have to do is Reg B stuff. You'll have transactions that are covered by the Reg Z HPML rules, but they're not covered by Reg B. All we'll have to do is the Reg B HPML rules. But you're going to have many transactions. Most of your transactions will be covered by both Reg B and the HPMLs. And then you got to sort through the rules and figure out which one do we follow, because they're not identical. What I would have liked to have seen them done is to put the requirements in Reg B, over in Reg Z for HPML, go through all the requirements for HPMLs. You got to give them a written appraisal, certified, licensed, physical inspection, get a second appraisal when you got to flip. And then when you get to the part of the reg where it talks about giving them a notice and giving them a copy of the appraisal, just refer to the requirements in Reg B, and that would have eliminated the duplications. But I guess that would have been too easy, and Congress had to make it a little more complicated.
Well, there's a lot of traps for compliance folks in these because of the way they've done it.
There are, and it's just, they build all that complexity in it, and I don't think Congress did it on purpose. I think it truly was a mistake. You had one group drafting this section of changes, another group drafting this section. The left hand didn't know what the right hand was doing. Surely you wouldn't add this complexity in here on purpose. That doesn't help the consumer at all, and it doesn't help anybody involved in the process. It just really doesn't make sense. But anyway, ECOA, the law itself has been out there since 1974. The implementing reg is Reg B. It's been in place since 1975. We do have official interpretations in the form of commentary. We talk about the purposes down here. And Reg B has always primarily been about promoting the informed or providing credit to all creditworthy applicants. When they added the appraisal guidelines a number of years ago, They also added to the purpose to provide applicants with copies of appraisal reports used in connection with credit transactions.